just tell me who you are and what it's doing.
Okay, I'm Phil Davies. I'm the Marketing Director of Water Fuel Engineering, and we're the producers of the now famous hydrogen autonomous electrolyzer.
Amazing. So if I don't want to use that with your name connected to, can you just tell me again what your company is and what it does?
Okay, hi. Water Fuel Engineering is a producer of autonomous electrolyzers to retrofit onto vehicles to reduce emissions.
And why is this needed? Why is
Well, we're all suffering. Look at what's happening in the UK today. Every Friday, our school kids are going on strike to complain about the effects of global warming, and that should say it all. Our generation, have really messed up, and we've got to do something about it before it's too late. And one of those solutions is to accept that we'll have diesel for the foreseeable future. Let's not fight that, but let's clean it up. And burning diesel in an oxyhydrogen-rich solution delivers completely different emissions profiles, and that's what we want. We want cleaner air, better for our kids, but also better for our grandparents. For God's sake, let's live today.
How did this company form? Like, what was the initial idea that you realised that you needed this solution and what?
So Water Fuel Engineering was founded 7 years ago by Angel Nenov, who's our managing director, Bulgarian-based. Bulgaria had a huge pedigree in this field. Much of the research has been done originally in Bulgaria by a famous guy called Yul Brown. Doesn't sound very Bulgarian, but he changed his name. And he pioneered a lot of the work into oxyhydrogen. He discovered, for example, that when you burn tyres in oxyhydrogen, there's no soot, almost zero soot, which is an incredible advancement. And he was doing this back in the 1970s, so not really that long ago. But then suddenly it lends itself to the practice of how that would work within a vehicle situation, within automotive.
What is the significance of this product to society and the economy now in Britain?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all struggling to get our heads around the solution. I've not started with a proper answer.
No, but we can.
Okay, so the significance of having this kind of technology on vehicles is that the vehicles already exist. And it's a really tempting suggestion to think that if we scrapped them all and went all electric, we'd have an absolute zero carbon footprint. But of course we wouldn't, because somebody's got to make those new vehicles. So that manufacturing process in itself is wasteful. So surely the balance would be, if we could retain those vehicles, they already exist, but retrofit them with an autonomous electrolyzer, which will deal with the consumption of carbon and process it in such a way that the emissions coming out of the tailpipe are reduced by 80%, and that's got to be great for everybody. Very low cost solution, much cheaper than anything else that's available right now.
Can you tell me about your involvement with the innovation in Innovate UK?
Yeah, we've been delighted to get the backing of Innovate UK. Our struggles really are that we are a small micro business. We're not an SME. The phrase SME is awful. It lumps us with much bigger players than we are. And Innovate have begun to recognise that. They've begun to look for micro businesses and to support us in a way that potentially we would not have made the grade under the old kind of schemes. So very small companies are now getting that backing. We certainly are. We're getting the backing of the sort of things we need. It's not always about money. We don't always need hard cash. We often need guidance, we need help, legal advice, we need information about IP, and introductions to investors. And I think that whole package has been something which has really suited us.
Why is it important that scale-ups like yourself are supported then? You say that you found it really hard, but
Okay.
does it help? So, you're offering a solution that's needed, and that needs help, doesn't it? So yeah, tell me about that.
Okay, well, left to its own devices, the market doesn't actually treat new technology very well. Not surprisingly, the big players, the big automotive manufacturers, are resisting change, including to electricity. They want to do it at their own pace, so they control the market. I'm not knocking them for that. We would probably do the same if we were in their shoes. So it's fair competition in a way, but it means that small players can't influence that mass market. So typically, when we introduce our concept to some of the big players, they don't want to know, or they want the ideas, but they then want to go away and develop them themselves. So the reason that Innovate UK is important to us, and we need their backing, is because of the traditional location that we find ourselves in, which used to be called the Valley of Death. That when you're scaling up, you do get to a point where there's nothing more you can actually do on your own. You need the help and support of others. So you need legislation to change. So for example, until 18 months ago, Vehicles which had a retrofit technology did not count. It simply didn't count. It could be the cleanest vehicle in London, but if it was a retrofit solution, you still couldn't get in there without paying the congestion charge and the air quality charge. So things like that are very difficult without the backing of a Quango, if you like Innovate UK, who have access to ministerial influence and can begin to sell our arguments on a collective basis, but also maybe on an individual basis.
Would you say that's your biggest scale-up challenge, or has there been more?
In a way, because we know what we've got works, all the recording measurements for emissions on vehicles is completely unsuited to new technology because it's algorithm based. So basically, it's like me saying to you, shall we have a competition so you can lose weight fastest? But by the way, I'm going to take your weighing scales away, and I'm just going to make the decision as to who looks about the lightest. And do you know what? It'll be me. So it's that there's no standard recording device that exists to get the data of real life recordings of emissions on real life vehicles right now. We can put a finger in the air and know how bad the air quality is per se, but we don't know who's causing it, and we're trying to change that.
So how could the UK, in your opinion, get better at supporting scale-ups?
Okay, certainly it could have a stronger.
You could say the UK.
I'm so sorry.
No.
You're quite right. Okay, I think in the UK it's well known that we have a very strong startup culture. I think that's well supported, it's well grounded, and I think it's going as well as perhaps it can. I think actually, strangely enough, it's at the other end of it. We don't have a great culture of bringing products to market, and that's the biggest problem. So actually the scale-up side is where we find it important. We have had the support to develop, to start out, to get going, but now, as I say, as we enter the valley of death, we really need, in America it's much easier. They have a failure culture where they're quite happy that a business fails 5 times, 10 times, but then succeeds eventually. Here we're much more risk averse, and I don't think there's as much support at this stage, and that's what we need. And I'm hoping that's what the UK are now doing.
What would you say has been most useful about the programme, or highlights, perhaps?
Of this specific programme?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's it helped you?
Yeah, I think the Innovate UK Scale-Up programme has been really helpful at our time in development. The timing was superb, really. We were arriving, as I say, at that gateway to the Valley of Death and expected to struggle. We need investment now. We've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds getting to where we are now. We still have a few more stages to go before we actually go into mass production. And that's partly the issue. So how do we find that money? How do we know where to seek the investors? How do we professionalise ourselves? Because I think typically both entrepreneurs and innovators are not great administrators. And we know that in order to get through that programme, we need to smarten our act up on financials, we need to smarten our act up on IP, we need to smarten our act up on legal, things that are not necessarily skill sets that entrepreneurs and innovators have. So it's been useful to build those blocks into what we already are in order to be presentable into the marketplace and into investors.
There might not be an answer to my next question because I don't really know much about the programme outside of the questions I've asked you. But has it been useful to meet other people on the programme? Is that interesting to see how they're scaling up? Do you get to share expertise? Tell me about that.
That's interesting. I think one of the challenges of this programme is it's very London centric, and strangely on this particular programme there are no London businesses involved, and I think that's a shame. I think the programme ought to have become more regionalised. Many of the sessions that we've had could have been handled remotely, but they never really got their heads around that, which is a real shame. But yeah, I think it's been useful to get together with the other companies on the scheme to see how they go about things. They're doing completely different things to us, so there's not that kind of risk of sharing your technology with competitors. But it is fascinating to see how much we share in common. The same challenges about legislation, the same challenges about finding the right clients, pitching properly, getting away from the fact that we're very good at talking about what our products do, but we're not always very good at talking about what the benefit is to you and being much more customer focused, and that's really important. So seeing other people both succeed in the way they communicate, but also in the way they fail, and likewise when we fail, when we fall on our face sometimes, to be corrected, to find yourself picked up by a friendly group, if you like, by people who are like-minded has been really useful.
I have a question. What's next? What does the future hold for you?
Well, we're very excited. I mean, we are now exporting our products into India, where there's less legislative and a bureaucratic restriction. So we're very happy to be there, but we'd love to be much more successful in the UK. The UK, we hope, will, post-Brexit, if that's what we're facing, hopefully we're not, but we'll come to our senses. But if post-Brexit, we find ourselves here and still having to face the traditional bureaucracy and hierarchy of what goes on with automotive, then we've got to somehow get to change the way they measure things, change the way they look at vehicles, change the way they measure the emissions, and be more receptive to ideas which will make a difference. That's where we are. We're making a huge difference in India, which is, you know, the biggest killer in the world, in a sense, with their pollution. It kills more people in India than anywhere else in the world. So we're delighted to be there and contributing to their health and well-being. But we'd like the UK to maybe take a little bit more notice of us.
Perfect. Just one follow-up question for me.
Oh, well, you've got an apple, you can't ask me any questions.
You've mentioned about how we do better at supporting startups, and the kind of support is, I guess, drives up as businesses grow. Can you talk about why that is, and how do you think that's kind of come to be? And I'm just going to actually leave the remaining chat to Pauline while you answer that.
So why is it dry up? Okay. Thinking that through, really. Thoughts on this?
I mean, if you want this new diligence stuff to be able to enter in the programs.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, we're a small company and we're doing accountancy in very simple way, which is not much the criteria of new diligence checkings. So actually, this is the entering point to the every project. To be able to get funding, we need to go through all these steps, and it's quite difficult for us.
Well, yeah, on top of running your business.
That's a really good, actually, that's a really good point.
Well, you know that, Paul.
Yeah, well, okay.
Probably most of the company says so.
Okay, so the challenge of ongoing support from the likes of Innovate UK and indeed other agencies is very much that at some point the hand-holding stops. It's, I think, very easy to set up a scheme where you look for brand new startups and support them, and there's a lot of money put in at the front end. I think that's really, really helpful. But as I say, I think there's a fall away, and the fall away comes because I think a lot of the time, Innovate UK and others don't understand the very technology that we've developed. So the people who potentially we're asking to continue to help us are saying, well, no, it's market forces now, it's up to you. We're going to release your hand, off you go, into that valley of death, and you'll stand or fall on your own devices. And as I say, in America it's different. They are very much more supportive through that process right to the end. And often the sort of governmental support in America gets repaid anyway, because quite clearly, if they can hold the hands of their businesses through to that end point, where they're employing more people, paying more taxes, that's their payday. So it really does work, and we need to adopt more of the marketing-led solution that America has, and perhaps not just think that we are in the UK just about counting the numbers of startups, because we tend to be very, I think, numbers-driven. We know that. We hear politicians all the time say that, isn't it great, the UK economy is booming because 24,000 businesses started up last year. They're very reluctant to tell you how many closed down or how many just fell by the wayside. So I think we've got to be less league table driven and actually count the value of the businesses that the government have supported. How many millions are they turning over 5 years after they've been started up? And that's the support we need. We need to get through the whole legislative process. We need to be sure that as we move forward, any barriers that are in our way, which are unreasonable barriers, that people help us get rid of them. If they're reasonable and we're failing because of ourselves, that's fair. Fair competition. But if there are barriers there to growth, and very often there are, through due diligence checks, for example, how can we as a startup? Perfect example. How can we as a startup be expected to show 5 years of accounts in order to get loans? Because we haven't got 5 years of accounts. So it's chicken and egg. And again, in America, they're much more adept at understanding that process.
Okay, nice. Good job.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yay.